Welcome back, Night Wanderer. Tonight, you're slipping quietly into a chapter of history they definitely forgot to teach in school. By the way, if you were actually there, you'd probably have been arrested, eaten badly preserved fish, or caught something unpleasant. But don't worry. Tonight, you're only here in spirit. Before we set off, do that slow scroll to like and subscribe, but only if these sleepy little time loops are your thing. And tell me where in the world you're watching from, and what time your clock says. It's strangely comforting knowing who else is still up. Now, lights low, maybe grab a blanket or let your ceiling fan hum away in the background. Time to drift gently back, one step at a time. The first thing you notice is the cold. Not the good kind of cold. Not the crisp alpine cozy blanket sort of cold. This is damp, architectural cold, the kind that seeps through stone walls, chews through your tunic, and settles directly into the hollow parts of your bones. Congratulations, you've survived another night, sort of. You're lying on a mattress of straw, so flattened it may now qualify as symbolic rather than functional. It creaks when you move, but not because it's old, oh no. It creaks because the floor beneath it has begun to splinter in protest. Your blanket, singular, is a woolen relic that itches when dry, clings when wet, and smells like someone else's confession. And it is, naturally, both damp and itchy. The wool is stiff with old sweat, holy water, and perhaps divine irony. A draft tickles the soles of your feet. Yes, your feet are poking out. Again. Because despite your best efforts, you are too long for this cot. Templar barracks weren't built for comfort or height, just for piety and the occasional flagellation. You shift slightly. You immediately regret it. Your back cracks like poorly fired pottery. Your neck feels like you slept on a rock, because, actually, you did. There's a small lump beneath your sack pillow that you sincerely hope is just a spare buckle. You make a note to remove it tomorrow. You will not remove it tomorrow. Somewhere near your head, you hear the distinctive scratching of tiny feet. A rat, possibly named Gregory, is making his morning rounds. He's your 5 a.m. wake-up call. You have grown to respect his punctuality. You open your eyes to darkness. Not quite night, not quite dawn. The air is thick with the heavy breath of too many bodies in one room. You share this barracks with 5 other squires, 3 of whom snore in polyphonic misery. One of them, Thomas, is already sitting up cross-legged, reciting morning prayers into the void like someone negotiating a hostage situation. The ceiling looms just high enough to pretend it's out of reach. It's arched, made of time-darkened timbers, each one older than your entire family lineage. One of them has a crack that looks like the Virgin Mary if you squint through sleep deprivation and spiritual desperation. The only light seeps in through a thin slit in the wall. Not a window. That would be too generous. This is a murder hole for ventilation, approximately the width of your hand and the warmth of rejection. You inhale. The air smells like wood smoke, mildew, horse sanctity, and flatulence. And yes, someone has passed gas in their sleep. Possibly the same someone who kicked you in the shin an hour ago. Possibly you. You close your eyes again. Just for a moment. You know what comes next. You are waiting for it. And then, it happens. The bell. It tolls once. Heavy, somber, like a very serious cow announcing the end of all comfort. You do not spring up. Squires do not spring. You unfold yourself slowly, creaking with effort, one joint at a time, like an old book being opened by someone with sticky fingers. Your tunic is at the foot of your bed, still damp, still regrettable. You slide it on. It slaps against your skin like a wet confession. It smells faintly of vinegar and failure. You lace your hose, 2 uneven, threadbare tubes that cover your legs with the gentle caress of burlap and emotional neglect. Your belt has shrunk, or you've swollen, or perhaps the leather is haunted. Either way, it resists you. You win, but just barely. Your boots, your boots are technically shoes. They are stitched from something that may once have been cow. They bend in places they shouldn't and squeak like a guilty conscience. You finally stand. That's a generous word for the pose you strike. It's a crouched, hunched, groaning vertical shuffle. Your knees sound like a knight's armor in battle, which is ironic considering you are not the one wearing any. You glance at the others. Half are still asleep. One is drooling into a communal blanket. One is already trying to brush his teeth with a twig and regret. No one speaks. No one needs to. You all know what time it is. It's time to go pray, of course. To atone. To beg forgiveness for sins you probably haven't had time to commit. To stand in rows, stiff and shivering, while Brother Anselm recites from the Book of Psalms like he's trying to bore a demon out of hiding. As you shuffle toward the chapel door, Thomas mutters, "Last night, I dreamed I ate a whole apple." You nod, solemnly. Was it red? No. Green, tart, with salt. You say nothing, because dreams of fruit are dangerous. Fruit is a luxury. Fruit is lust adjacent. Your knight, Sir Guibert, is waiting at the door, already armored, already scowling. He has not slept. He does not believe in sleep. He says rest is for the weak and the damned. You nod. He ignores you. He turns. You follow. Outside, the courtyard yawns open, still dim, still cruel. Somewhere, a rooster crows. It sounds sarcastic. Like, even it knows you're not built for this. You take a breath. You are a squire. To a Knight Templar. Which means you are one broken strap away from getting yelled at by God and man. And the day has only just begun. There are no alarms in the 12th century. Only bells, shouting, and the subtle indignity of waking up to the smell of sanctified mildew. But since you've already met the bell, that cowbell from hell, it's time for step 2 of your sacred, bone-chilling initiation into another glorious Templar day. The morning ritual. You begin with what the order generously calls ablutions. What this means in practice is freezing water, no soap, and a communal basin that looks like it's been consecrated in someone else's backwash. You shuffle into the courtyard like a guilty ghost. It's still dark, but the stars are fading, which is always a bad sign, because when the stars vanish, the chores begin. The ablution basin sits on a stone pedestal, glistening with last night's frost and last decade's lime buildup. It's the color of tin, with the aroma of expired humility. You dip your fingers in, the water bites back. It's the kind of cold that makes your ancestors flinch in their graves. You splash your face. It makes a sound, a sort of wet slap of repentance. Some water gets in your mouth. It tastes like iron and unresolved conflict. You resist the urge to weep. You are stronger than that. You are damp. Thomas is beside you, trying to scrub the sleep from his eyes, using what might be a piece of linen or might be a rag previously used to polish hooves. You don't ask. You never ask. Nearby, Brother Aloysius paces, muttering prayers under his breath with the intensity of someone who once tried to ban laughter. He nods at you with holy judgment. You nod back with holy dread. Then comes the tooth-cleaning ritual. Yes, it exists. No, it is not satisfying. You chew on a twig, a bitter, splintering twig from a tree blessed by someone who didn't know what teeth were. You scrape it along your molars and pretend you're not just making things worse. Your gums bleed slightly. That's considered normal, healthy even. A sign the sins are exiting through your mouth. You spit into the grass withers, you move on. Next stop, the latrine trench. Don't worry, it's worse than it sounds. It's located behind the stables, because naturally the stench of horse manure pairs beautifully with the stench of human suffering. It's a 2-for-1 special. The trench is long, shallow, and flanked by 2 planks, just wide enough to sit on, just narrow enough to question your balance and your life choices. You join the queue. There's always a queue. The squire in front of you is humming a Gregorian chant under his breath, while holding what looks like a blessed pebble. You don't know why. You don't want to know. Finally, it's your turn. You mount the planks like a condemned acrobat. You look down. You immediately regret looking down. You do your business. There is no toilet paper. There is moss. Rough, judgmental moss. You use it. You do not feel better. As you stand, a chicken scuttles past your feet. It stares at you. This is Henrietta. She is no ordinary chicken. She belongs to the cook, answers to no one, and is rumored to have pecked a novice into tears during Lent. You respect her. You fear her. You nod. She does not nod back. You return to the barracks, spiritually lighter and physically unsettled. Inside, the other squires are finishing their own rituals, binding their ankles with leather straps, combing lice out of their hair with a spork-shaped shard of bone, muttering Deus Vult like it's a coping mechanism. Then the communal prayer. You line up, kneel, and Brother Anselm begins. In the name of the Father and the Son and the entire lack of personal autonomy. His Latin is impeccable. His tone is flat. His breath smells faintly of onions and passive aggression. You repeat the words, not out of faith, out of muscle memory and mild fear. You have already sinned this morning. Twice, if you count swearing at the moss. The prayer ends. Your knees ache, your stomach growls, you pretend it's part of the chant. Sir Geber appears, like a pious thundercloud. He surveys the squires with the stern gaze of a man who has definitely struck someone for blinking during scripture. You try not to blink, your eyes water. You blink. He walks past you, says nothing, your soul exhales. Then, the morning inspection. It's exactly what it sounds like, except worse. Each squire must present their hands, their tunic, and their boots. You extend your hands, they're cleanish, your tunic is damp but straight. Your boots, well, they're boots, technically. Sir Squire sniffs. Still muddy, he says, as if you've insulted his lineage. You nod. He moves on. You survive. Again. Finally, it's time for the sacred stretching. Not for health, for war readiness. Which means you and the others must hold a plank position while reciting Psalm 23. Your arms shake halfway through. He restoreth my soul. Your soul, for the record, does not feel restored. Someone farts. No one laughs. This is a holy place. The morning ritual ends not with joy, but with resignation. You survive the basin, the trench, the chicken, and Sir Gebert's nostrils. Your reward? Another 14 hours of indentured holiness. Still, the sun is up, the sky is blue, and the lice haven't migrated to your eyebrows today. Maybe, just maybe, God hasn't forsaken you completely. Welcome back, brave little time traveler. I admire your persistence. It's not even mid-morning, and already your knees ache, your stomach whimpers, and your undergarments cling like a penance. Now it's time to return to the place you call home. A word that, in this context, could also be translated as slightly less windy hellbox. Let us begin with the structure itself. Your barracks, the one reserved for squires too young for battle and too old for excuses, is a squat rectangle of limestone, sweat, and ambition. Built atop holy ground, or at least that's what the brothers say, though frankly, it smells more like it was built atop a former swamp and one very angry ghost. The walls are thick, but not the kind of thick that keeps out cold or shame. No, they simply absorb it, hold it close, and release it at night like a guilty conscience. Each wall leaks in its own way. Some weep actual water, others just regret. The windows are not windows, they are arrow slits. Because nothing says cozy, like being constantly reminded you may be invaded by God's enemies at breakfast. Now the interior. There are no decorations, not even the sad attempt at aesthetics found in peasants' homes, where someone might hang garlic or a poorly carved Virgin Mary on the wall. Here the only decor is function. Hooks for hanging gear, pegs for hanging hope, and the faint outline of where someone once tried to draw a phallus with charcoal, then claimed it was a sword. Brother Anselm was not amused. The floor is uneven flagstone, except where it's dirt, which is most of it. Technically, they spread rushes across it to absorb spills. But over time, spills includes blood, wine, lice, holy water, and the occasional prayer-induced nosebleed. No one replaces the rushes regularly. They are more of a spiritual sponge now, soggy with centuries of foot funk and divine indifference. You and your fellow squires sleep in what are generously called cots. They are wooden frames with rope slats, on which rest straw mattresses, which may or may not still contain actual straw. More likely, crushed beetle shells, a few mouse turds, and the hair of the last occupant who died of bad air in 1191. Your pillow is a sack, filled with wool or feathers or possibly rocks. You no longer care. You share this space with 5 other boys, each of them noisier, holier, or smellier than the last. Thomas snores with a rhythm that could summon demons. Geoffrey speaks Latin in his sleep. Nobody has dared to wake him during one of his in nomine patri episodes, in case he's actually possessed by an overzealous bishop. Now let's talk about vermin. You live in constant company. Your most loyal companions? Lice, fleas, and the ever-ambitious rat. Lice are the least offensive. They stay mostly on your scalp, under your coif, unless of course they migrate south to your tunic collar and begin their sacred pilgrimage to your underarms. Fleas are more capricious. They bite, they lay eggs in your blanket, and somehow still judge you while doing it. You've tried boiling your clothes once. It didn't help. It just made them shrivel in weird places and smell like boiled failure. And then, there are the rats. Rats are smart. Rats are bold. One of them, Gregory, you've named him, makes direct eye contact while stealing crumbs from your bread. He is not afraid of you. He knows you're not allowed to kill him, not during Lent. You've considered forming an alliance. Now, hygiene. You'd think, being in the holy order and all, that cleanliness would be next to godliness. It is not. Cleanliness is next to get back to work. We have no soap. There is one basin for all of you. It is refilled once a day. By Jeffrey, who has never once washed his hands. You bathe perhaps once a week, in a barrel. Outside, they pour water over you while you shiver, chant psalms, and try not to make eye contact with Henrietta the chicken, who watches with disturbing intensity. You scrub your skin with old linen and ashes, because ashes are purifying. You smell vaguely of campfire and despair. Your nails are never clean, your feet are permanently damp, and your ears, well, let's just say you once pulled a flea from your ear and felt it changed your personality slightly. Haircuts happen monthly, not for style, for lice control. Brother Anselm does them with the same knife he uses to carve meat. The result is something between penitent monk and startled sheep. Now and then, someone develops a rash, or boils, or the itch. No one discusses it, because once you name it, it becomes real. And then you're quarantined. They put you in the chapel's back alcove and douse you in vinegar. If that doesn't work, they add prayer. If that doesn't work, they consider exorcism. Now, the smell. Yes, we've delayed this long, but you knew it was coming. The Squire's barracks smell like damp wool, fermented ambition, dried blood, candle wax, mildew, hope, slowly dying, and occasionally, cheese. Where is the cheese smell coming from? No one knows. There has been no cheese in weeks. Despite all this, you've developed a kind of fondness for the place. It is yours. Your lice, your straw, your festering corner of God's great tapestry. Still awake? Brave soul. You've now seen your room, you've heard its creaks, smelled its sins, and learned which rat is most likely to eat your eyebrows. And yet you remain. There's honor in that, or at least inertia. Congratulations. You've made it through prayer, pestilence, and plague-adjacent grooming. Which means you've earned your reward. Breakfast. Or, as the order calls it, the first test of faith. You follow the line of squires shuffling toward the refectory, a stone chamber where sound echoes like guilt, and the windows are mostly decorative holes that let in the birds, but not the light. The smell hits you first. Burnt barley, sour milk, sweat, and something vaguely egg-shaped that may or may not be fermented. Welcome. Tables stretch across the room in long rows, wooden, warped, and carved with generations of initials, tally marks, and one alarming depiction of a saint doing things saints should not do. You take your place on the bench. The wood is cold. Your buttocks flinch. Sir Guibert is at the head of the room, silently watching, as if he personally disapproves of digestion. Brother Anselm says a prayer before the meal, a full 3 minutes of Latin that includes references to humility, obedience, and disturbingly, the cleansing of the inner vessel. You bow your head. Try not to look at the bowl. But, oh, the bowl. Let's talk about the bowl. It is wooden, stained with a palette of beige and betrayal. You're not sure when it was last scrubbed, but you suspect the Crusades hadn't started yet. And inside it, a ladle full of porridge? Gruel? Something that used to be oats? It trembles slightly. You try not to breathe through your nose. The texture is neither solid nor liquid. It is instead a mood, a commitment, a test of your jaw's ability to accept suffering. You scoop a mouthful. It slides off the spoon like a reluctant ghost. You taste it. Ah yes, hints of dirt, despair, and the faintest trace of goat. Not fresh goat, just goat. Is that a pebble? You bite down. Yes, a pebble. Congratulations. You've discovered crunch. You chew and chew and chew. The porridge does not break down. It simply accepts your effort and reflects it back at you. Still, you eat anyway, because in the Middle Ages, food doesn't nourish, it tests you. To the side, you're offered a slice of bread, but not the fluffy kind with crusty edges and olive oil dreams. No, this is Templar bread, hard, dense, gray. It's the kind of bread that has intentions. The kind of bread you could use to repel Saracens if thrown hard enough. You dip it in the porridge, it does not soften. Nothing softens here. Now the protein option. You've been given cheese. That's what it's called anyway. It is beige, rubbery, smells like the bottom of a monk's sandal. You sniff it. It sniffs back. It is, in theory, made from goat's milk. The goat was probably in a bad mood. You eat it. It squeaks against your teeth. It lingers in your molars like a theological debate. Next comes the drink, wine. Yes, really. But before you get too excited, this is not the wine of joy. This is penance wine. Thin, bitter, stored in wooden casks older than logic. It has a taste best described as vinegar, but with secrets. You sip it, it burns slightly. You feel closer to God, not spiritually, just physically. As if you might meet him sooner than expected. Thomas leans over and whispers, "Last week there was a beetle in mine." You nod. "Blessed?" "Possibly. It crawled out and ascended." "Fair." The meal continues in silence, because God is always watching, especially during breakfast. Someone coughs, someone else drops their spoon. It echoes like a bell tolling for the death of dignity. A fly lands on your porridge. It appears unbothered, possibly rejuvenated. You let it stay. Let's talk briefly about what's missing. There is no fruit, no meat, no spices, no butter. No dreams. Salt, only on feast days. Which means you've forgotten what joy tastes like. A pigeon waddles across the rafters above. It drops something. It narrowly misses Brother Anselm's bald spot. You bite your tongue to avoid smiling. You bite your cheek to stay awake. When you finish your bowl, you're allowed to lick it, not out of indulgence, out of duty. Because the scraps could feed someone else. You lick it. You do not feel dignified. Then comes cleanup. You carry your bowl to a basin filled with cloudy water. It smells like old meat and lukewarm doctrine. You dip. Swish. Try not to think. Jeffrey is beside you, scrubbing his spoon with what appears to be a cloth made from old undergarments. You say nothing. He smiles. You look away. Once you've dried your bowl with a shared rag, you stack it on the shelf beside dozens of others, each one stained, dented, and probably cursed. Back outside, your stomach is full. Technically, you're not nourished, you're not comforted, but you are no longer hungry, and that's what counts. Because you'll need your strength. You have 12 hours of labor ahead, 12 hours of blisters, barked orders, and the deep spiritual ache that comes from polishing armor that doesn't belong to you. Still, you take one last sip of wine. Because you're alive. Sort of, and the cheese hasn't moved, yet. The meal is over, your belly is half full, your mouth tastes faintly of medieval disappointment, and your hands are still a little slimy from the refectory's washing basin, which means it's time to get dressed. Oh yes, what you're wearing now? That's just your dawn layer. A shapeless, semi-transparent tunic thrown on after your ceremonial morning shiver. But now, the real performance begins. Let's start with the undertunic, made from linen if you're lucky, if not, hemp. If you're really unlucky, and today you are, it's a coarse blend of wool and prayer. The fabric has the texture of regret. It's both rough and strangely oily, as though it's been steeped in last season's bacon fat and then left in a reliquary to marinate. You yank it over your head, it sticks at the armpits. There is a seam that bites into your shoulder blade with the persistence of a minor demon. You make a mental note to scratch it later, violently, possibly with a broken spoon. Now the braise, medieval underwear, a baggy, folded mess of cloth that ties around the waist and gathers at the thighs, giving the wearer the silhouette of a deeply uncomfortable mushroom. Yours are slightly damp from yesterday's accidental moat encounter, and they smell seasoned. They bunch everywhere. You tie them tight, too tight. Now you can't feel your hips. Perfect. Next, the hose. Not the stretchy, elegant kind that a Renaissance prince might wear. No, these are woolen tubes that run from your toes to your thighs, stitched by someone who hated geometry, and you, personally. They never match. One leg sags, one clings. Together they feel like oppositional snakes attempting to strangle your knees. To keep them up, you must tie them to the braise with string. The string is frayed. The knot won't hold. You try again, your fingers cramp. You consider dying instead. Now, the overtunic. The star of the show. It's thick, itchy wool, dyed a shade of beige that can only be described as divine surrender. It smells faintly of mildew and your predecessor, Pierre, who left abruptly after the incident with the incense burner. Nobody talks about it. The tunic still remembers. You wrestle it over your head. Your head does not fit. You yank harder. The neckline rips slightly. You say a quiet prayer. The sleeves are too long, the hem too short, and the fabric folds in strange ecclesiastical ways that funnel cold air directly to your nethers. But you're in. You are now technically dressed. Technically. Let's not forget the belt. It's made of cracked leather, once black, now a shade of dying horse. You wrap it around your waist. Tug it tight. The buckle slips. It always slips. You try again and again. Eventually it holds, sort of. You will spend the rest of the day tightening it every 8 minutes. Now for your shoes, if we can call them that. They are more like leather suggestions, slippers with ambitions, held together by thread prayer and a stubborn layer of dried mud. You slide your foot in, it doesn't go. You jam it in. There's something inside, something lumpy. It moves. You withdraw your foot, you shake out the shoe, a beetle tumbles out, looks at you, then scuttles toward Henrietta, who watches silently from the doorway. She approves. You put the shoe back on. It still doesn't fit, but you stop caring. Next, the coif. A tight-fitting cloth hood designed to keep your hair clean under a helmet you may never earn. It wraps under your chin, over your ears, and into your identity. You look like a sad pastry, a dumpling of despair. You tie the strings, one snaps, you tie it anyway. And now, the surcoat. Oh, the surcoat, it's long, heavy, stiff as dried parchment, and emblazoned with the red cross of the Templar order. Bright, bold, and already stained with something that might be last week's eel stew. You slip it over your head. It tangles. You spin. You knock over a candle holder. You catch it. You live another day. The surcoat sits unevenly on your shoulders. One side droops. You try to adjust it. You fail. But you don't care. No one notices. No one cares. Everyone is suffering. Lastly, if you're on stable duty, you receive gloves. They are not gloves. They are hardened pouches of stitched hide, too stiff to flex, too loose to grip. They smell like old onions and God's indifference. You slide them on. Your fingers disappear into voids. Now, fully dressed, you take a breath. You are bound, chafing, itchy, restricted, and at peace. This is your armor. Not for war, but for obedience. You look around. The other squires are adjusting their hose, some already sweating. Others giving up entirely and pretending to tie knots while mentally preparing for death by latrine. Geoffrey's tunic is on backwards. No one tells him. There's no point. Sir Gilbert enters the room. He nods once. Everyone stands. Your belt immediately slips. You catch it just before it hits your knees. Sir Gilbert glares. You freeze. He says nothing. He walks away. You have passed the first test of the day. You are fully dressed. You are ready for labor, for prayer. For whatever petty indignity fate will hurl at your head this afternoon. But mostly, you are ready to sweat. Profusely. Because this much wool in the Holy Land was not designed for survival, only for symbolism. Now that you're fully dressed, and I use that word generously, given that half your garments are more restraint than clothing, it's time to earn your keep. There's no bell. No gentle wake-up from a kindly older knight with a clipboard and a breakfast burrito. No, your summons to labor arrives in the form of a barked command from someone who hasn't smiled since the Second Council of the Lateran and doesn't intend to start now. Sir Gilbert, of course. The man is a slab of scowls stitched into chainmail. He grunts once, and that means, begin. So you do. Your first task is one of great spiritual significance. You sweep the courtyard. Yes, the open, stone-paved, forever dusty courtyard. Sweeping the outdoors is a tradition born not of logic but of penance. The Templars believe cleanliness pleases God, and nothing says devotion like shuffling sand back and forth in the wind for 2 hours until your wrists go numb. You wield your broom, a bundle of straw lashed to a stick, like a weapon. You attack the dust. The dust attacks back. You lose. The sun is already high, which is strange because you're fairly certain it's only been 15 minutes. Your scalp sweats beneath your coif. Your armpits are staging a rebellion. You cannot remove the layers. That would displease Sir Gilbert and God, but mostly Sir Gilbert. Occasionally, you pause to rub your hands. Your palms are blistered, your fingers swollen. You haven't even gotten to armor duty yet. After the courtyard comes the stable. Ah, the stable. A place of rich smells and sudden betrayal. You're greeted by Lazarus, a warhorse with hooves the size of your head and the personal temperament of a tax collector. He stares at you with eyes that say, I have killed men for less than this. You shovel manure, you haul hay, you avoid eye contact. At one point, you attempt to brush Lazarus. He shifts his weight ever so slightly, pinning your foot beneath his righteous posterior. You whisper a prayer. He farts. When your foot is released, you limp away in silence, having aged 5 years in that moment. Next up, armor polishing. Because nothing says Squire quite like polishing a full suit of plate armor that is not yours, will never be yours, and is almost certainly decorative. It's ceremonial armor, used only on feast days, processions, and the occasional extremely judgmental portrait session. You sit in the shade, shade finally, and open your tin of vinegar, chalk powder, and what Brother Anselm claims is a cleansing balm. It smells like rotting apples and penance. You scrub the breastplate, then the pauldrons, then the greaves, each with a rag rougher than your worldview. The armor reflects your face, sunburned, greasy, eyes like wet bread. You sigh. Geoffrey appears beside you. He's been sent to polish the chainmail. He dumps the whole thing in a barrel and begins shaking it violently, as though attempting to ward off a demon. It clatters like a bag of broken teeth. You say nothing. It's not worth the breath. By now, your hands ache. Your back has developed a new, exciting kind of pain. Right between the shoulder blades, the squire's knot, as it's known. You're offered no rest. You are sent instead to the cistern. Because the water barrels must be filled, you carry 2 wooden buckets slung from a yoke. The buckets leak. The yoke digs into your clavicle. The path to the well is uphill, naturally. At the well, you lower the rope. It creaks. You haul up water. Your arms burn. Your soul exits your body for a brief coffee break. By the time you return, half the water is gone. Some sloshed out, some simply left. You don't ask questions anymore. You dump the water into the barrels. Sir Gabert nods. A rare gift. Then you're sent to the armory. Your task, inventory. There is no paper. No parchment. You are to count everything from memory. Helmets, swords, maces, spears, shields, daggers, arrows. The holy relic that's probably just a chicken bone in a fancy box. You count aloud. You forget a number. You start over. Geoffrey enters, sneezes, knocks over a halberd. You start over. Then comes the wall patrol. You are not trusted with weapons, so you simply walk the wall, nodding at the sentries, pretending to look vigilant. The sun scorches your neck. Birds poop on your surcoat. You wipe it with your sleeve. The smear darkens. You say it's a divine omen. Finally, you're granted lunch, which is the same porridge as breakfast, only slightly colder, and now with the added crunch of a beetle leg. You chew without thought. You have entered the autopilot zone of the medieval workday. After lunch, you're sent to the library, which sounds nice until you realize it involves scraping parchment. You are handed a dull blade and an instruction. Make it smoother. So you scrape vellum, over and over and over. Your hands ache, your wrist cracks, the parchment curls. You're told to start again. You begin to hallucinate. You think you see a fish in the corner of your vision. It blinks, then vanishes. It was probably real. At some point a bell rings. It's time for evening prayer. You stagger to the chapel. You kneel. Your knees pop like old wood. Brother Anselm begins to chant. You attempt to listen, but your mind is elsewhere. On your blisters. On the rat that winked at you this morning. On the armor that will never be yours. On Lazarus, who probably dreams of crushing you beneath his holy hooves. And as the chanting echoes in the cold stone space, you think, this is my life now. And it is. Ah, the body, a vessel of divine purpose, a temple for discipline and self-denial. A construct of flesh held together by prayer, salt, and possibly 4 distinct parasites. And when something goes wrong with it, which it will, frequently, there is only one response: bleed it. Let's set the scene. You wake up on the floor of the armory. You don't remember falling asleep there. Your mouth tastes like vinegar. Your head pulses like a Gregorian chant set to the rhythm of regret. You have a headache, or, as Brother Anselm calls it, a congestion of the humors, born from excess melancholy, insufficient prayer, and perhaps impure thoughts about Brother Etienne's calves. Whatever the cause, your options for treatment are, shall we say, limited. You report to the infirmary, a word that implies help is on the way. It is not. The infirmary is a room just large enough to house a cot, a crucifix, and a variety of instruments that would give a modern dentist a nervous breakdown. Brother Baldwin greets you. He is the order's physician, by which I mean he owns 2 knives, an apron, and a book in Latin that he cannot read. He examines your eyes by holding a candle disturbingly close to your face. He nods gravely. You are afflicted, he says, but not beyond redemption. You hope that means tea. It does not. He reaches for the bowl. This is the bleeding bowl, an heirloom passed down through generations of medically confused monks. It is wooden, cracked, and still faintly pink from last week's incident with Brother Raoul's ankle. You are told to sit. You sit. He ties a strip of cloth around your upper arm, tightly, and asks you to squeeze a damp potato. You comply, because resistance would be unchristian. Then comes the blade. It is not sharp. It is not clean. It is, however, enthusiastic. Brother Baldwin slices. Not deep, just enough to release the badness. Your blood pools in the bowl. You feel lightheaded. This is interpreted as progress. Do you feel cleansed, he asks. You nod, mostly because you're too dizzy to do anything else. Now, to balance the other humors, you are offered a tincture. It is a thick brown liquid brewed from boiled bark, dried toadstools, a dash of elderflower, and, according to rumor, a single strand of St. Jerome's beard. You drink it. It tastes like smoked despair and wet barn. It does not help. Next, the leeches. Because, of course, the leeches. Brother Baldwin opens a small jar. Inside, several moist, squirming blobs await their moment of glory. He selects one. Its name is Agatha. He places it on your temple. It latches on immediately. You are told to relax. You attempt to relax. You fail. Agatha does her work. She is efficient. She is hungry. Eventually she falls off, plump with your medieval blood. She is returned to her jar, a hero among worms. For good measure, Brother Baldwin also rubs your forehead with a poultice made from pigeon droppings and rosemary. It smells biblical. And now, purging. Because sometimes you must cleanse not just the blood, but the bowels. After all, illness is thought to originate in the gut, which is ironic considering the only thing you've eaten today is sadness and a beetle. You are given a laxative tea brewed from wild herbs, chalk dust, and one alarming sprig of nightshade. It works, swiftly, violently. You don't make it to the latrine, you cleanse the floor. Brother Baldwin applauds. The evil has left you, he declares. You nod. You are no longer sick, you are simply empty. Let's take a moment to explore some other medieval remedies should you have the misfortune of contracting something worse. Say, for example, a fever. Treatment includes wrapping the patient in wet bed sheets, placing them next to a roaring fire, feeding them hot wine, then bleeding them, then praying that God takes the soul before the flesh rots entirely. Or tooth pain. A common issue, considering that toothbrushes haven't been invented yet and everyone eats bread with the texture of bricks. Solutions include clove oil, expensive; holding a frog in your mouth, cheap; screaming into a barrel, free; extraction via pliers and prayer. You're told stories of men who survived sword wounds to the gut but died from a stubbed toe that went green. And if you catch a cough, you're considered cursed. You're isolated. You're given onion slices wrapped in wool to wear around your neck. And if that doesn't work, they'll try trepanning. That is, drilling a hole in your skull to release the spirits. One knight did this twice. He now speaks only in riddles. You look around the infirmary. There are no beds, just pallets, straw, a few scattered candles, and the persistent sense that anyone who stays here too long won't be leaving upright. You decide you feel better. You stand. Your knees wobble. Brother Baldwin nods. You are healed, he says, rinsing the blade in what appears to be holy water and regret. You thank him. You mean it. Sort of. Because you know the truth. The cure didn't work. You just survived long enough to pretend it did. And that here is the best outcome possible. It's nearing dusk now. The light has gone that peculiar medieval shade of yellow-gray, like aging parchment soaked in broth. The bell rings for the evening meal. Your stomach, empty, suspicious, hopeful, lurches in anticipation. Because in this timeline, you must eat to suffer. You shuffle toward the refectory, the same one from this morning. Same cold stone walls. Same long wooden benches polished by decades of despairing elbows. Same Brother Etienne, still muttering psalms under his breath like he's trying to ward off the memory of breakfast. You file in, you sit, you wait. The bowls arrive. They are wooden, scarred, still damp from the morning rinse, which involved no soap, just a quick swirl in what might have been leftover baptismal water. Maybe. Inside the bowl, pottage, a word that promises variety, a reality that delivers glue. This particular pottage is a blend of barley, turnip, onion, more water, and something suspiciously fibrous, possibly bark. It has the color of betrayal and the consistency of mashed regrets. There's a thin film on top. It quivers. You do not ask why. You eat anyway. Because in the Middle Ages, food doesn't nourish. It tests you. You lift the wooden spoon, the handle is splintered. You attempt to scoop. It slides off. You try again. This time it works. You get a good clump of something. It reaches your mouth. It tastes like dirt had a bad day. You chew. It resists. You chew harder. Your jaw clicks. You swallow. Somewhere in the distance, a monk coughs ominously. For protein, you are offered a piece of salt fish. It is dry, it is beige, it is possibly older than the Crusades. You knock it against the table, it thuds, a few flakes fall off. You bite it, it splinters. You suck the shards like a prisoner working a piece of flint into a shiv. The salt burns your cracked lips. Your tongue goes numb. This is the highlight of your day. Next, bread. Stale, of course. Cut in thick, uneven slabs that double as utensils and, in extreme cases, weapons. You dip it in the pottage. It softens, then collapses into the bowl like a dying raft. You eat the pieces anyway. They cling to your teeth. They whisper to your gums, "You will never floss again." You consider the rumor that Brother Chieri once made soup out of boot leather and wild nettles. They say it gave him visions. They say he saw St. Augustine tap dancing. They say the boot was tastier than this. At the end of the table, a novice attempts to gnaw his way through a particularly aggressive carrot. He fails. He begins to cry. A silent, pious cry. No one comforts him. They're too busy chewing. You are offered ale. This sounds promising, until you remember it is small ale, watered down, flat, and brewed from hops, barley, and divine disappointment. You drink it. It is lukewarm. It tastes like sweaty barley tea, but it's wet, and that counts for something. Occasionally, when luck strikes, the Templars are blessed with meat. Today is not one of those days. But you hear stories of mutton so tough it had to be boiled for 12 hours and still emerged angry. Of sausages made from parts of animals you'd rather not inventory. Of pigeon pies, which were not pies, nor exclusively pigeon. And yet, on feast days, these are devoured with holy zeal. Sometimes they serve cheese, that is, curdled milk pressed into discs and left in cellars until they acquire personality. You once had a slice. It moved. Brother Anselm says that means it's alive with the spirit. You're unconvinced. Tonight there's a special treat. Stewed prunes. 2 of them. They float in a greasy puddle that may or may not be wine. One has a stem. The other has a worm. You eat them both. The worm is the most flavorful part. As the meal ends, Brother Etienne begins the evening read-aloud, a passage from Augustine, or maybe Boethius. It hardly matters. Your stomach gurgles, loudly. The novice next to you jumps. You ignore it. Because this is the final test of the day. Survive dinner, keep it down, and give thanks. For in the world of the Templar Squire, food is not comfort. It is compliance. It is caloric penance. It is God's way of reminding you, you are here to suffer, and you must eat to do so. You scrape the last of the pottage with your thumb, you lick it, you regret it, the bowls are collected, the bell rings again, time for evening duties. You rise, heavier but not fuller, digesting something that, in a kinder world, might not qualify as food at all. But here, it's nourishment. Holy, rotten, unquestioned, and tomorrow you'll eat it again. The sun is gone now. Not gone, just shifted behind the jagged silhouette of a fortress wall where seagulls and sins go to roost. Nighttime in the Templar stronghold arrives like a damp wool cloak, heavy, scratchy, and imbued with the faint scent of candle wax and fear. This is when the real discipline begins. Not that backbreaking labor and starvation weren't enlightening, but those were just warm-ups, physical trials. This part? This is the spiritual paranoia hour. It begins in the chapel. Stone, cold, echoing with the regrets of generations. You kneel on flagstones worn smooth by penitent knees and deeply unsupportive to your own. The air smells like incense and mildew and someone's faint, persistent foot fungus. Brother Anselm leads Compline, a series of prayers designed to protect the soul from the terrors of the night. You know, demonic visitations, spiritual sloth, dreams of impure thoughts, bedwetting, standard threats to eternal salvation. The chanting is low and solemn. Candles flicker in their sconces, and somewhere close, you swear you hear whispering. You look over your shoulder. No one. You tell yourself it was the wind. It was not the wind. After the prayers comes the reading of infractions. Yes, tonight's moral violations are read aloud, like gossip, but worse, because it comes with a side of hellfire. Brother Lucien fell asleep during matins. Brother Gerard was observed sneezing during a silent fast. Brother Matthew's tunic was unbelted for 3 full minutes. You sit very still. You pray you were not seen picking your nose behind the cistern. You were. Of course you were. Because here you are always watched, by your brothers, by the Grand Master, by the ghosts of dead martyrs, and most importantly by God, who apparently has the time and interest to monitor every elbow scratch and passing heretical thought. So you conform, or you confess, and either way, you suffer. Let's take a short detour, a historical sidebar, if you will. Templar theology is strict, rigid, unforgiving. You are taught that everything happens because of divine design. Did you trip over a cobblestone? That was your pride being punished. Did your porridge curdle? Clearly God disapproves of your internal monologue. Stub your toe, you must have doubted the Virgin. This results in a society of walking that mumbling, guilt-sweating men who flinch at shadows and mutter apologies to saints they cannot name. Oh, and demons. Let's talk about demons. They're everywhere. According to Brother Anselm, in the wind, in soup gone sour, in that mysterious rash on your inner thigh. In the moment you look too long at Brother Etienne's very shapely elbows. Demons are responsible for fever, for doubt, for feeling too sleepy, for feeling too awake. They cause headaches, hiccups, and horse colic. One of them might live in your tooth. But do not fear, there are wards against them. A scrap of St. Sebastian's tunic, actually mouse fur, a vial of holy water that smells distinctly like soup, crosses drawn in chalk over your bed, which you sleep in surrounded by lice and regret. And of course prayer. So much prayer. You mumble them before meals, before rest, after using the latrine, before touching anything, after touching anything. Just in case, because while hellfire is eternal, God's patience is famously limited. Now, let's not forget the other gods, the local gods, the ones no one talks about but everyone secretly acknowledges. The well spirit, for example. Legend says if you draw water too quickly, the well grows angry and your next bowel movement will be cursed. Or the cat that lives under the chapel steps. If it hisses at you, bad harvest. If it cuddles you, you're gonna die. There's also the man with no tongue, a tale passed around like bad ale. He appears only when you lie. A tall shadow, no eyes, no teeth, just breathing. He stands behind you in the dark and whispers, "Say it again." You have never seen him, but Jeffrey swears he has, which makes Jeffrey both untrustworthy and now probably cursed. Your eyes drift toward the door. Night deepens. The brothers retreat to their cells, but even in sleep, surveillance continues. Each cell has a crucifix. Each crucifix stares at you. You're not sure if the eyes are painted on. They follow you, just a bit. You remember the words of Brother Thierry, even your dreams can betray you. You did not sleep well last night, because last night you dreamed you had a warm bath, and that, here, is blasphemy. Fun historical footnote. Dreaming of comfort, or women, or music, or non-pottage food is considered a test. If you awaken with a smile, you're required to confess it. Smiling in your sleep, suspicious. Laughing equals demonic. Wet dreams, straight to hell. There are brothers who sleep sitting up, with ropes around their waists, to anchor the soul. You tried it once, you woke up choking, it was not restful. Before bed, you do one final ritual. You whisper the prayer of inspection, quietly to yourself. Lord, see me. Lord, forgive me. Lord, please do not let the lice win tonight. Because even as you lie down, even as the world softens into half-light and your limbs ache with the full-body fatigue of medieval disappointment, you know that somewhere in the corner, between the shadows and the mortar, someone is watching. A brother, a saint, a ghost, or just Jeffrey being weird again. Either way, you do not let your guard down. You fold your hands, you close your eyes. You whisper, I am devout. I am penitent. I definitely didn't sneak a second prune. And in the silence that follows, you hear it, a distant holy sniffle. Brother Baldwin cries in his sleep again. He always does. He dreamed once. He told you it was of a warm ocean. He hasn't smiled since. Night continues. But not in the comforting cup of tea and a podcast sense. This is Templar night, and it does not sparkle. But there's still technically time left in the day, and after prayer, labor, dinner, more prayer, internalized guilt, and maybe a touch of demon-induced nausea, you are, theoretically, allowed leisure. Or as it's known around here, structured reflection and modest recreation. Translation, you may stare at a wall. As long as you don't enjoy it too much, let's begin with games. Games are tricky in the order, because fun is heretical, but mental discipline is encouraged. So what you get is monastic chess. It's not regular chess, it's slow, it's quiet. It's played on hand-carved boards where the pieces are vaguely distinguishable lumps and everything smells faintly of candle grease and confession. You sit opposite Brother Etienne. He stares at the board like it insulted his mother. No one speaks. Speaking would imply enthusiasm, and enthusiasm leads to dancing, and we do not dance. You move a pawn. You wait. 5 minutes pass. He moves a bishop. Another 5. It takes 2 hours to play 9 moves. You're not sure anyone ever wins. The real thrill isn't the game, it's the watching. Templars love to watch and judge. A circle gathers, they nod solemnly, they murmur about strategy. Someone coughs. Brother Gerard glances up sharply. Too loud. You return to silence. This is peak entertainment. Other activities include illuminated manuscript repairs. It's like coloring, but sadder. Recopying psalms by candlelight, punctuated by your own blurry tears and the occasional ink splotch of existential despair. Polishing helmets, yes, again. Or just staring into the fire and quietly contemplating how long it's been since you experienced physical warmth or joy. Brother Baldwin knits. He claims it calms the spirit. He's made the same wool sock for 7 years. It is neither complete nor comforting, but it exists. Now let's talk about law. The Templars have rules, not just some, not dozens, hundreds. There is, in fact, an entire codex of conduct covering everything from the proper way to enter a room, never ahead of a senior night, to how many bites it takes to eat a prune. Break 1, punishment. Break 3, punishment, plus a lecture. And the punishments, you ask? They're public. Always public. Because what is discipline without an audience? Tonight, there's a hearing. Brother Lucien was caught, scandal of scandals, snoring during lauds. That's the pre-dawn prayer, which is held at 3 a.m. on a stone floor while fasting. Frankly, you're impressed he managed to sleep at all. But rules are rules. The brethren are called to gather. You stand outside the chapel in neat lines, your breath clouding in the cold air, your knees quietly screaming. Brother Lucien stands in the middle, head bowed. The Grand Master approaches. He carries the rod. It is carved from olive wood, polished smooth, menacing in its restraint. A list of Lucien's offenses is read aloud. He blinks, he does not cry. That would be pride. Instead, he murmurs, "I accept my correction." And he is whipped. Not brutally, just symbolically. A few strikes to the back, enough to smart, enough to remind, and everyone watches and feels better about their own quiet sins. This is the most cathartic part of your week. Because in Templar society, schadenfreude is the closest thing to joy. Occasionally, punishments escalate. There's a scale. Whipping, basic, fasting for 3 extra days, intermediate, sleeping on bare stone for a month, advanced, assigned to latrine duty in summer, hellish, forced to copy Leviticus by candlelight, backwards. And then there's exile. It's rare. But when it happens, it's like someone died. The offending brother is stripped of his surcoat, given only bread and water, sent to serve a local monastery in disgrace. No one speaks his name again. You wonder if that's worse than the whippings. Back to fun. On feast days, which occur roughly twice a month, provided there isn't a plague, siege, or solar eclipse, you're allowed music. One brother is permitted to play a crumhorn. It is, historically, the ugliest instrument known to man. It sounds like a goose in therapy. Or a bagpipe with bronchitis. But you are grateful. Because for 5 minutes, the silence is broken. There is rhythm, movement, even a foot tap. Brother Anselm pretends not to notice. You all pretend not to be excited. And then, as quickly as it arrived, it ends. The crumhorn is packed away. The joy is cauterized. The silence returns. Late in the evening, you sometimes catch the novices in the corner, whispering riddles. One goes like this: what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and repents at night? The answer is you. Because your back is ruined, you were prideful, and now you're crawling to confession again. Even your jokes are depressing. You glance around the room. A few brothers are nodding off, their heads bouncing gently against stone. Brother Gerard is mending a torn scapular. Brother Thierry is muttering to himself. Again. He might be reciting psalms. He might be hexing a pigeon. Hard to say. And you're here. Breathing. Not praying, not sinning, just existing in the gray buffer zone between misery and duty. And somehow, that counts as leisure. As curfew approaches, the bell tolls. One long, sonorous note. You extinguish the candles, fold your hands, rise. You whisper, "Forgive me for enjoying today too much." Which is ironic, because enjoying involved 3 hours of praying, 1 bowl of salted glue, and watching a grown man get mildly lashed for sleepiness. But still, you felt something close to amusement, and for that, you must repent. Tomorrow's leisure? Maybe polishing armor while humming Gregorian chants. But not loudly. Loud humming is vanity. There's a strange silence in your cell tonight. Not the holy meditative kind, but the itchy, awkward, emotionally repressed kind. The kind of silence where you start thinking about feelings, or worse, about her. You don't say her name. You barely remember her face, but you remember the shape of it, the soft curve of an unspoken memory buried under 6 layers of guilt and monkhood. Because in this life, in this very specific slice of medieval celibate suffering, romance is not just rare, it's forbidden, blasphemous, a direct hotline to damnation via your undergarments. Let's back up. You, dear viewer, are a squire, not yet a full Templar, which means technically you were once among women. Once, before you were cloistered, before your hairline receded from stress alone, before your entire personality became obedient, hungry, and afraid. Back in the village, your pre-order days, there was the faint, cruel illusion of romance. It looked like this: a shy glance over moldy bread, accidentally brushing hands while carrying firewood, sweating nervously while standing within 12 feet of a maiden and wondering if looking her directly in the eye would make you explode in sin. Ah yes, courtship. Also known as dowry calculus. You didn't fall in love, you fell in debt. Because romantic eligibility was largely a matter of economics. Does her father own 2 pigs? Do you own 1? Will anyone be embarrassed if your combined barn collapses in front of the priest? If yes, congratulations. You may now marry at 14. You'll receive a hay-stuffed mattress, half-torn, a goat, slightly possessed, and the overwhelming responsibility of producing heirs, despite having only the vaguest idea of how that actually works. In the Templar order, of course, you skip that step. No wives, no lovers, no unchaperoned glances. You are spiritually married to God, which is beautiful, and by beautiful, I mean staggeringly isolating. You are now a man who must suppress every impulse, every errant thought, every dream that features anything round, soft, or attached to a person with hips. You've never prayed harder than you do after accidentally imagining ankles. But let's imagine, just for fun, which is of course not allowed, that you had pursued romance before donning the white mantle. What might that have looked like? Glad you asked. Here is medieval flirting. Step 1, don't speak. Step 2, don't touch. Step 3, exchange goods, bread, lace, possibly a dead pheasant. Step 4, look directly at the ground while your parents discuss your marriage contract over stew. Step 5, get married. Step 6, discover on your wedding night that your spouse has 12 toes and believes singing invites demons. Step 7, die during childbirth, or plague, or after eating a suspicious turnip. True love. Now, what of Templars and temptation? It happens. Oh, it happens. Despite the vows, despite the threat of expulsion, damnation, and public whipping, with verses from Deuteronomy, some brothers fall, or stumble, or teeter. They are found hiding love notes in psalters. They are spotted sighing at washerwomen. They are overheard whispering names at night that aren't St. Jerome. There are stories. Brother Etienne once snuck away for 3 days during campaign. He returned smelling of rosemary and guilt. He never spoke of it. He now fasts every Thursday until he faints. Repentance, after all, is a full-time hobby. Occasionally, the Grand Master gives a lecture on the perils of carnal desire. It is thorough, it is vivid, it involves descriptions of bodily fluids that make everyone extremely uncomfortable. You sit, you sweat, you vow never to think again. At the end of the lecture, he hands out a copy of the Rules of Chastity. It contains phrases like, avoid the company of women unless on a battlefield. Speak not of their features, for the devil listens. Purge thyself with fasting, if thou awakeneth, excited. You commit these to memory, you pray they work. They do not. What's ironic is that despite the fear, the judgment, the internalized panic, you're still human. You still notice the curve of a neck, the softness in a gaze, the brush of a sleeve. You still carry scraps of memory from before you were robed and sanctified. A girl who gave you half a pear once. A moment of laughter behind the grain cart. A song you heard someone humming, so sweet it made your stomach ache. You remember. You try not to. Because if the other brothers knew, if the Grand Master knew, you'd be fasting for a month. Sent to scrub the latrines, forced to transcribe the Song of Songs backwards, naked, while reciting the genealogy of Christ. So instead you repress, like a good Templar. You channel it into labor, into prayer. into polishing chainmail until your thumbs bleed. You convince yourself that the warmth in your chest is piety, not nostalgia. That the pang in your gut is hunger, not longing. And at night when you lie in your cell, staring at the flickering candle that throws dancing shadows across the stone wall, you allow yourself one brief moment, 1 second, to imagine what might have been had you not taken the vow, had you not become a squire, had you lived in a time where affection wasn't a sin. But that second passes, and you pray it away, hard, fervently, because you know what comes next: guilt, a dream, another fast. And tomorrow, you wake up and pretend you've never felt anything at all. You've heard the phrase, "Let kids be kids." That's adorable. Now forget it. In the world of the Knight Templar Squire, in the broader medieval society from whence you came, children are not children. They are malnourished adults in training, equipped with slightly shorter limbs and significantly more chores. There is no childhood as a protected developmental phase of life. No pediatrician, no playdates, no baby shark. Just work, God, disease, and a vague hope you won't die before your second molars come in. Let's rewind. Let's say you're not a Templar Squire just yet. Let's say you're still 7. You wake up on a straw mattress beside 4 siblings, 2 goats, and 1 rat that you've named, against all logic, Sebastian. You stretch, you scratch, you put on your one tunic, the one you've worn since you were 4. It still fits, kind of, because your growth has been politely delayed by parasites, chronic hunger, and seasonal dysentery. You don't go to school, you go to the fields, to the pigs, to the well, to the loom, the forge, or the damp pile of flax, which smells like mold and anxiety. By age 5, you were helping your mother rethatch the roof. By age 6, you knew how to gut a fish without vomiting. By age 7, you could estimate the market value of a chicken based solely on its squawk. And if you were lucky, you might be sent to a monastery to learn how to read. If you were less lucky, you were sold to a knight. Enter, you, the squire. Training began early, and by training we mean hauling heavy armor, getting yelled at in Latin, trying to clean chainmail with vinegar and prayer, learning how to fall off a horse gracefully, you never do, memorizing the difference between piety and servile fear. Hint: one makes you whip yourself, the other just makes you sad. At no point did anyone hand you a teddy bear. Instead, you received a belt knife, a backache, and a deeply repressed sense of self. Still, you saw other children in passing. Tiny figures running barefoot through mud, balancing buckets of turnips like condemned circus performers. Some were younger than you. All looked tired, and why wouldn't they? Because medieval children, my dear sleepless viewer, were born into a game where the goal was to survive past age 5, half didn't. Avoid catching something awful, like the sweating sickness, which sounds like a gym trend but absolutely isn't. Contribute economically before developing object permanence. Child mortality hovered somewhere between grim and what's the point. Half your playmates would vanish before puberty. The other half would marry at 12. Sometimes both. And don't get me started on toys. Do you have a toy? No. You have a stick, a smaller stick, a rock you named Jeffrey. And if you're extremely blessed, a wooden spinning top carved by someone who loved you enough to risk splinters mine. Most children made their own games, which often involved pretending to be dead to avoid chores. Others played tag. But their version was called pox, and the tag child had to lie down until cured. Dark fun. Now, inside the Templar compound, children are rare. You're the youngest. Everyone reminds you of this, usually with phrases like, "Fetch my helmet, boy." "Don't stand there, boy." "Why are you crying, boy? It's just your own blood." You are not nurtured. You are shaped, hammered like steel, filed like parchment, molded like that lump of pottage from dinner. The elders do not believe in encouragement. They believe in stoicism, shame, and sudden slaps to the back of the head. You cry? Go fast. You laugh? Repent. You dare to dream? You'll be copying Leviticus until your eyes melt. But somehow, you learn. You learn to endure. You learn to bow. You learn how to wrap wounds, shine boots, detect mold in a barrel of lentils with just your nose. And you stop asking why, because questions are for heretics. You simply do, and hope someone up there is keeping score. Occasionally a new novice arrives, a scrawny, freckled thing with eyes too large and dreams too loud. You see him struggle, you see him fumble his sword, you see him wipe snot on the altar linens, and you know with bone-deep certainty he will break or bend. or quietly vanish. You try not to care. Caring is inefficient, but part of you wants to tell him it gets easier. It doesn't, but silence is holy. At night, in the narrow stone cell where your bones creak louder than your breath, you allow yourself one flickering thought. If I'd been born later, in a softer time, maybe I'd have had a dog. Not for work, not for meat, just a dog to pet, to name, to love. But instead you have Brother Etienne, who snores like a dying bellows and once slapped you for humming. Close enough. You roll over, you pull the blanket tight, you whisper a prayer to no one in particular. And you try, for one blessed moment, to imagine a childhood that didn't come with blisters, punishment, or famine. You fail. But hey, at least you're still breathing. For now, it's sometime past midnight, but don't bother checking. You don't own a clock. Time is measured by bells, bowel discomfort, and how many times Brother Etienne rolls over and lets out a pious snore. You lie on your straw mat, eyes half closed, the faint squeak-scratch of tiny claws echoing from the beams above. It's not an enemy. It's Gregory. Your rat. Your only friend. Probably. To be clear, Gregory is not officially your pet. Templars don't do pets. They do horses, yes. War dogs? Occasionally. But affection, companionship, naming vermin, that's suspiciously emotional. So you don't tell anyone about Gregory. You just leave out a crust sometimes, a bit of dried pottage, a fleck of cheese so old it's considered a relic. He accepts these offerings with solemn dignity. You've watched him nibble by candlelight, tiny paws clutching the crust like a relic, beady eyes reflecting the same tired, sleepless horror you feel in your soul. You relate deeply. You might be projecting, but who else listens? Let's talk about animals. In your world, animals fall into three broad categories. Useful, things you can ride, eat, or milk. Cursed, things that bite you, curse your crops, or whisper to witches. Blurry, things that do both. Your life is surrounded by creatures that serve both as labor and liabilities. Let's begin with the horse. Noble, majestic, also prone to kicking you in the sternum without warning. You, as a squire, spend a good part of your day elbow-deep in horse mucus, trying to dislodge a stone from a hoof while muttering saintly prayers to avoid death by saddle. Horses are not gentle companions. They are war machines with hay-based digestive tracts and moods like minor nobles. They'll tolerate you, until they don't. Then there's the dog. Some knights keep them, massive beasts with names like Godric or Valor. But the average dog? A scrawny, patchy thing that lives off scraps and minor miracles. More pest control than companion. You've seen dogs tear apart a loaf of barley bread like it owed them money. You've also seen a dog try to mate with a suit of armor. It was oddly effective. What about cats? They're around. But in many places, they're viewed with suspicion. Too independent, too mysterious, too associated with the devil's grandmother. Still, they earn their keep. They catch rats, or try to. Yours mostly sits in the corner, staring at you like you owe her an apology for being born. Her name is unspoken, not for lack of trying, but because every attempt ends with a scratch and a judging look. You respect that. Then there's the vermin. Oh, the vermin. They are everywhere. They are the true majority. Fleas hopping like tiny prophets of doom. Lice making their homes in your eyebrows. Mice breeding like theological arguments. Cockroaches, sentient armor with legs. And of course, rats, including Gregory. You've come to accept them. There is no war against the vermin. There is only cohabitation. The walls scratch at night. The floor twitches. Once, you found a rat sleeping in your boot. You didn't scream. You whispered sorry and chose sandals. You are learning. Sometimes an animal dies. A chicken, maybe. A goat. Brother Thierry's pigeon, which he insists was an angel in disguise. He holds a funeral. You attend out of curiosity. The eulogy is passionate. You leave a bit unnerved. That night he hums to the clouds and eats an entire onion raw. You do not ask questions. What's worth noting is this. In your world, death is not sentimental. Animals die, children die, knights die. You say a prayer. You move on. But Gregory? Gregory's different. Last winter when you were ill, too weak to pray, too nauseous to eat, he stayed. He brought you crumbs. You think, maybe he just dropped them while stealing. But still, you choose to believe. And when you whispered feverishly to the shadows, he listened. He didn't judge, didn't quote scripture, didn't fast on your behalf. He just existed. Quietly, unbothered, warm. One day, they'll discover your secret. They'll see the little trail of food, the corner of cloth he dragged away to make his nest. the name scratched into your wooden bedpost. They'll punish you. For sentiment, for attachment, for letting a bit of your soul escape discipline. You'll be told that compassion is for saints, not squires. That rodents are carriers of plague, not emotion. They'll burn the nest, they might crush him. And you'll nod, you'll apologize, you'll accept your lashes. Then you'll go back to your cell and cry harder than you ever did for Brother Anselm. Because Gregory, the rat, was the only living thing in this fortress who knew your name without barking it. Tonight, he's still here. You hear the faint nibble of teeth on wood. You feel his tiny weight pressing against your boot. You whisper, "Good night, Gregory." He doesn't reply, but he stays. And in this cold, cruel world, that's everything. There's an old saying among the senior knights, "He who fears the weather has not been rained on enough," which is, frankly, the kind of thing you only say after you've grown so calloused and frostbitten that you can no longer distinguish snowflakes from small knives. For you, dear viewer, now inhabiting the tired, blistered, chronically underdressed body of a Templar squire, weather is not a backdrop. It is a punishment. A loud, wet, freezing, relentless force that smacks you in the face whether you're praying, polishing armor, or simply trying to digest a suspicious lentil. Let's begin with the most consistent enemy of your daily existence, the sun. No, not the poetic sun. Not the warm, dappled beams of golden bliss that modern people associate with spring brunch. This is the Middle Eastern sun, and you are very much European. Your skin, already cursed with a medieval diet, undiagnosed rickets, and aggressive fleas, is not prepared. You are pale. Translucent, even. Within minutes of stepping outside in full chainmail, you begin to simmer. Not sweat. Simmer, as if your body has become a mobile cauldron of regret and salt water. Your tunic clings to your back like guilt. Your helmet becomes a miniature forge. Every breath feels like inhaling dry bread crust and disappointment. You smell like scorched wool, desperation, and mild onion. The armor doesn't help. Layer after layer of quilted gambeson, padded surcoat, and rust-prone steel turns you into a walking, wheezing oven. By midday, you're dizzy. By afternoon, you've forgotten your own name. But the knight you serve does not care. He tells you to hydrate. You tell him you haven't seen clean water since Epiphany. He laughs, tells you to suck on a stone and think holy thoughts. You lick a pebble and wonder if God's plan includes hallucinations of cool breezes. Then comes rain. You think rain will be your salvation. You are wrong. It begins gently, like hope. Then suddenly, betrayal. The roads turn to soup. Your boots squelch with each step, becoming mobile bogs lined with fungus and whispered curses. Your cloak soaks through in moments, tripling its weight and clinging to you like a moist, judgmental ghost. The smell? Imagine mildew, sheep sadness, and that one corner of the monastery that's always damp and suspiciously warm. The rain leaks into your tent, into your bowl, into your soul. You try to pray, but every verse turns into a cough. And let us not forget the cold. Oh, the cold. It arrives not with elegance, but with violence. No snowflakes drifting poetically onto windowsills, just sleet, frozen mud, and wind that feels personally offended by your existence. You sleep beside dying embers, wrapped in a cloak so threadbare it could pass for spiderweb. Your fingers go numb. Your toes are questionable. Your breath fogs like a tiny ghost trying to escape your mouth. You consider cuddling with Brother Etienne out of desperation. Then you remember his chronic garlic problem. You embrace hypothermia instead. Templar fortresses are no better. Stone does not retain heat. It absorbs your will to live. The walls sweat in summer. They freeze in winter. And at night, every gust of wind feels like a small, icy betrayal delivered directly by St. Peter himself. Now let's talk about storms. Not thunderstorms, judgment storms. Because in this time, in this deeply superstitious, heavily sermonized, lightning is definitely an omen kind of time. A thunderclap is not just weather. It is God's displeasure. A bolt of lightning? Clearly aimed at someone who had a lustful thought, spilled sacramental wine, or didn't bow deeply enough during Tuesday's procession. You've seen a tree explode just outside the fortress walls. Brother Jean dropped to his knees and confessed everything from stealing figs to doubting the Virgin's midwifery skills. The tree was fine. Brother Jean now fasts during all full moons. Sometimes a dust storm rolls in. And by dust storm, we mean the full wrath of the desert. You wrap a damp cloth over your face and hope for survival. Visibility drops to 0. Your knight charges off to prey in solitude, leaving you to hold the reins of 2 nervous horses, a sack of flour, and what turns out to be a very angry goose. You cough, you choke, you contemplate becoming a hermit. The goose bites your knee. You decide against it. There's also wind. Oh, how the wind whispers. Through cracks in your cell, under the door, across the latrines. It howls, it moans, it sings the song of unoiled hinges and suppressed flatulence. It carries sand into your food, your bed, your eyes, your soul. It never stops. You've developed a twitch in your left eyelid. You name the wind Bertrand. You hate Bertrand. But perhaps the worst weather of all is the in-between. Those damp, gray, endlessly mediocre days when nothing dramatic happens. Just the slow, inescapable drip of moisture from the rafters and the smell of wet wool settling into your pores like a bad decision. You wake up soaked. You work soaked. You pray for sun. It comes back as a punishment. There is no winning, only dampness. And fleas. So many fleas. Still awake? You brave, damp soul. Know this. The Templars do not complain about the weather. They endure it. With grim determination, with chafed thighs, with frostbitten dignity, and deeply questionable hygiene. You too are learning to blink into sandstorms, to sip moldy water, to use your own body heat as a makeshift food warmer. And when the next thunderclap comes, you'll flinch. Of course you will. But you'll also mutter a prayer, tighten your belt, and keep moving. Because the sky, capricious, vengeful, soggy, does not care, but Gregory might. Death in your world is not an event. It is a presence. It sleeps beside you, eats with you, walks the fortress halls at dusk, humming quietly through the drafty stone. It's not dramatic. It's tedious, relentless, expected. You've spent your entire life dying slowly, like a candle with a soggy wick, flickering, barely lit, and frequently used to cover the smell of mildew. Tonight, as your body aches, your tunic itches, and your only friend Gregory rustles softly in the rafters, you feel it again, not fear. Just awareness of how close it always is. Let's start with the basics. Life expectancy? Somewhere between laughable and you made it to 40, witchcraft. For a Templar squire like you, overworked, underfed, and repeatedly kicked by armored horses, death could come from almost anything. A bad fig, a stubbed toe, a paper cut inflicted by a particularly aggressive salter. But tonight, let's take a gentle walk through the most likely ways you might meet your end. Softly, of course. We're here to sleep, after all. Let's begin with disease. The fortress reeks of piety and plague. Not an active outbreak, not today anyway, but a background hum of infection. The communal latrine is essentially a prayer for cholera. You clean your hands with holy water, which is both unblessed and full of bat hair. You cough sometimes. You pretend not to notice the blood. Your teeth ache. That could mean scurvy, a toothworm, demonic possession, or just the fact that you've been chewing leather straps for lunch. You ignore it. That's the treatment plan. Brother Etienne died last month. He coughed, he shivered, he quoted Corinthians, and then he died face first in a bowl of lentils. They said it was God's will. You suspect botulism. The lentils smelled wrong. They buried him in a shallow grave behind the stables. No headstone, just a wooden cross, tilted slightly left. A goat peed on it the next day. Then there's violence. You've come close before. Knights get bored. Sometimes they spar with too much enthusiasm. Sometimes they confuse discipline with blunt trauma. Your left shoulder has never quite recovered from a misinterpreted training exercise. You asked too many questions about purgatory that week. You've learned. Silence is survival. And don't forget accidents. Today's fortress is tomorrow's lawsuit. But in your time, if you fall down the stairs, you don't sue the Templars. You haunt them for 3 days until they forget your name, which, honestly, happens sooner than you'd like. Then there's the external threat. This is the Crusades, after all. The land is tense. The politics are murky. Your armor is badly fitted. You've never actually fought in a battle. Just cleaned the weapons of men who have. But you've seen their eyes. How empty they look. How quietly they sit in the evenings, polishing blades that are already clean. You wonder what they see when they sleep. Then again, most of them don't. But perhaps the most poetic way to die in your time is faithfully. To starve for God. To fast until your organs give up. To flagellate until the infection wins. You've seen monks do it, chanting with cracked lips and pustulant backs. They say it brings you closer to heaven. You say it smells like pus. and poor decision-making. But you smile, and nod, and carry the incense. You're not suicidal, you're obedient. It's almost the same thing, and yet you persist. You keep breathing, keep kneeling, keep whispering prayers into the damp stone that listens but never answers. Why? Because hope is stubborn. It clings like mold to the corners of your soul. It whispers that tomorrow might be softer, that one day you'll have a bed with feathers, a blanket that doesn't itch, a meal that doesn't fight back, a life that feels less medieval. But tonight, here now, you accept the truth. You could die in your sleep, from fever, from hunger, from Brother Thierry's snoring, which occasionally sounds like a theological landslide, and that would be fine, because it wouldn't be unexpected. It would just be Tuesday. Before you drift off, you think of your family, of your mother, who gave you to the Templars with tears and a whispered hope that they'd make something of you, of your sister, who named a chicken after you, of your brother, who probably thinks you died years ago. Maybe you did, a little, but there's still breath in your lungs, still warmth in your chest. Still Gregory, rustling softly in the corner, cleaning his whiskers like the world isn't actively falling apart. That's enough. So now you close your eyes. Ignore the itching, ignore the damp, ignore the creeping sense that you'll never truly be clean again. You whisper a final prayer, not to God, to sleep, the only relief that doesn't come with strings attached or lectures in Latin. And as you finally gently slip into unconsciousness, you hear the bells in the courtyard ring once. You survived another day. Congratulations. You didn't step on a rusty nail, offend a minor saint, or get struck by theological lightning. You lived. Sort of. Sleep well, Squire, because tomorrow you rise again, to scrub more armor, chase more fleas, and wonder silently if Gregory might be ordained. Good night, Night Wanderer. It could always be worse. You could be here.